Las Vegas. We're joined right now. He's been our guest once before. It's been quite some time, maybe too long since we've had him. Many of you consider him to be quite controversial, but I will say that the brother has stuck to his guns. He's defined a pathway, a message, and a meaning, and he's been very, very true to that. And I think that this becomes very, very necessary as we don't find ourselves blowing around in the liberal winds, which sometimes blow our ship off course. Let us welcome back to LIB Radio the mayor of Blacktown. Welcome back to LIB Radio. How are you doing today?
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Can you hear me loud and clear?
I hear you loud and clear. You sound just great. You're joining us from, I believe,
Beautiful.
Metropolitan Chicago?
Absolutely. What is increasingly being described in the media as the murder capital of America.
Yeah, very serious issues that we've come to analyze over some time about what is going on in Chicago. And amazing and interesting that you bring that up. Of course, we do want to talk extensively about the aftermath of the Trayvon Martin killing, which is deemed to be not a murder by a judicial system which has buried a lot of justice for our people. But the fact that some of the most well-acknowledged and accessed leadership within the black community in America comes from Chicago, how can this accompany also such a high rate of the murder of black youth in Chicago?
That is a very, 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 very good question. And what I've noticed studying the media is there's a reluctance or a reluctance to admit or question how is it that Chicago is the home of obviously President Obama, Louis Farrakhan, Jesse Jackson. Chicago was also once the home of Oprah Winfrey, Ed Gardner, the founder of Soft Sheen Hair Products, George Johnson, the founder of Afro Sheen and Johnson Hair Products. Luster Hair Products is located here, and a lot of other prominent wealthy blacks. Ebony Magazine, of course, is here. This is also the area has 3 congressional representatives, who are 2 of which are getting ready to convene a state of emergency meeting. As a matter of fact, I think they're supposed to begin this evening at Chicago State University. Your listeners can Google that to get further information. But it is indeed a state of emergency. And of course, Jesse Jackson Jr. was one of those 3 prominent black congressmen from our large congressional district. And of course, historically, he's in the history books for his for a scandal. Okay, he and his wife. So the black community, we have a lot of questions that we should be asking as to, specifically, where do we go from here? Because like I've said to people, the evidence continues to show that just having a black president is not the promised land. And of course, the Trayvon Martin tragedy has absolutely sobered the black community up to, the shocking reality that just having a black president alone, there's something else. He's not the be all and the end all. Black faces in high places. That agenda is over with. We have to formulate a new black agenda to ask the question, and of course, answer the question of where do we go from here. And of course, I'm grateful and I'm thankful that you and I are engaging in this huddle, this dialogue, this discussion to help decide. The traditional mainstream media is the term I use is that they're fiddling while Rome burns.
Mm-hmm.
We have a crisis in leadership and mainstream media, specifically here in Chicago, I mean, they are oblivious to how dire the situation is in the black community. And one of the things that I often mention is the sagging pants crises with our boys, and that, some people, in the media, they think sagging pants is fashion. And, sagging pants is not skinny jeans, it's not baggy jeans. When we see our boys walking down the street with their pants sagging, that anyone who's taken psychology and knows that's indicative. It's an indication of something very dire.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in some cities there have been ordinances to outlaw sagging pants. I believe Louisiana is one city, or at least one state. New Orleans, I believe it is. Some other cities have billboard campaigns to outlaw or at least raise awareness that sagging pants is a disgrace. But
I'm wondering, in those cities that would pass an ordinance against being seen on the street with sagging pants, or basically showing your did they also ban any media from displaying those images within those cities?
That is a very, very, very good point, because
Yeah.
it would bring out a contradiction.
And it would also challenge an entrenched power, as opposed to going after these powerless young people walking down the street.
I recall when I was young, they had laws called indecent exposure. In other words, once upon a time, a person couldn't just walk out in the street and walk around dressed any kind of way. Indecent exposure.
Mm-hmm.
But these are the kinds of discussions that we should be having in the media. But, it seems as though tabloid journalism is everywhere. Not just on the Jerry Springer show and the Maury Povich show.
Mm-hmm.
The integrity of and of course what your show represents is absolutely, integrity. Thank God for the internet and shows like yours, and of course crusades like mine on Blacktown.net and ChurchForMenOnly.com to ask some powerful questions that get to the root of solving black people's problems and charting a new course for the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
And not just, like I said, fiddling while Rome burns, which is what mainstream media is doing while our boys are walking around sagging their pants, and the corresponding behavior, this thug gangster behavior, is this insane amount of violence, which quite frankly, could be described as a state of war. Mm-hmm. And of course is culminated with the Trayvon being mischaracterized as one of these, quote, bad boys. So this is why the entire black community should be annoyed and alarmed that we have a crisis with not just the image of black boys and black men, but the fact that it's culminated with the Zimmerman not guilty verdict. And quite frankly, whites, their attitude is not in my backyard. I mean, this is what this symbolizes. And of course, you may recall, but maybe it was yesterday or a few days ago, George Zimmerman is in the mainstream news for rescuing an overturned car. So yeah. George Zimmerman has this public relations campaign to basically put him in the same category as other heroes. Spider-Man, Superman, Iron Man, Batman. He's seen as a hero. And since we're on the subject of that, and I'm also shocked that I don't hear enough people say he was not a uniformed officer. Trayvon had no real reason or right to answer to someone in the rain, in the dark, an anonymous person. So there is a lot of discussion that has emerged about this stand your ground law, and how it works, and neighborhood watch.
And
I haven't heard enough.
I was going to say, you're going through a whole number of ideas, and rather than get 27 ideas and we don't get a chance to flesh any of them out, I want to just kind of focus in on a couple of points. And you were earlier talking about the sagging pants syndrome, and we have to realize we speak in body language the same way we speak in verbal language, the same way we speak in written language. Body language is a very, very well-known and solidly established means of communicating. So what I think has been kind of left out is, what is the message that these young men with their pants sagging, what is the message, or what are the messages, there could be multiple messages, that they're actually giving to the larger society?
They're hurting. And like I've said before, and it bears repeating because it is a statistical fact, but now it's an empirical fact, 70% of black boys are raised in the single mom, female-headed household. There's a recent news video by Oberman on Fox News, and it's an excellent video because he says some of the harsh things to the black community that I've been saying and that we need to say to ourselves. We've got to address a lot of our problems, our domestic problems. A good analogy is that I often use is that Pharaoh has let us go. We have made tremendous progress, and of course, this is what President Obama's ascension and, of course, subsequent re-election into the White House represents. We are at the end of that integrationist movement. We are free at last, and yet we got to acknowledge we've got a lot of problems that have to be addressed. So we have to have conversations like the one we're having now and ask these questions. What does the body language of our boys with the sagging pants represent? And of course, that, and like you said, in the media, the rappers, the gangster rap culture, who are these boys? And quite frankly, these are boys who, like I said, they don't have not only fathers, they don't have men. When we lived on farms and in rural society, which is how we've lived, and you're a farmer, you're a horticulturalist, so you understand that bond that man has always had with land and the earth and the weather and the seasons. We are no longer connected to that. And when we live close to nature, on farms, in the jungle, in the desert, boys were raised by men because, it was all hands on deck, okay? And boys had work to do. We didn't have electricity, but we were fully aware, going all the way back to ancient Kemet, of, what electricity was, because, of course, electricity corresponds with magnetism. And, of course, magnets have been on Earth for a very, very long time. So my point being, we've got to get back to nature. And, of course, this is where you have been doing an excellent job at. We cannot, allow that bond between man and earth to be severed. And so we're getting all of these symptoms of that bond, the bond between man and earth, the bond between father and son, and of course the bond between man and boy, when boys learn everything about manhood by watching, by observing other men at work, working the land, tying knots, chopping down trees, planting trees. And we're not going to hear this in mainstream media. We are not going to even hear this in the black church. So thank you for providing this opportunity to me, so that those of us who are indeed intelligent black men we can do what intelligent people do. And that's, like I said, chart a course for our people, save our boys, and of course deal with the sensitive subject of gender.
Yeah.
Gender is in the news, typified, of course, by what we continue to hear about the LGBT UVWXYZ alternative lifestyle community. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. And, of course, we see that they are a very powerful and influential political lobby. Yet my crusade and my battle cry is who's going to stand up and represent heterosexual black manhood.
And I want to kind of use that because you're talking about distinct, different, alternative lifestyles available on the menu, on the consumer menu within this country, but that this country is in actuality degenerating, and so therefore these alternative lifestyles being offered on the menu as just another acceptable lifestyle they run the gamut from feminism to the sagging pants subculture to the gender-confused subcultures. Now, returning back to one more point on this issue of the sagging pants, that I want people to understand before we do move on to other different topics, is that this sagging pants is communicating something very distinct to their parents, to the larger community, to the world in general, and to the society. Essentially, and, I have to moderate my language here, they're basically just saying, look at my butt. And, that is an insult. In Nigerian culture, when women have an ultimate criticism of the government, one of their ultimate criticisms of the government, and not only in Nigeria, but we saw it in Liberia, so it's indigenous to West African cultures, is that they shame the larger society by the elder women taking off all their clothes and going naked. Now, in America, that's deemed to be some sort of degenerate sexual provocation, especially to see old women take their clothes off. Americans will actually take pictures of that and put that up as pornography. But in Nigeria, it's the ultimate shaming. And they may not go completely naked. If they just take off their tops, expose their breasts or whatever in protest, that's basically they're saying to society, you have ultimately been shamed. So in a certain way, this showing of their butts to the larger society, these young males are saying to the society, you have so messed this up that this is what I say of you. But I would also say this also shows that they are themselves consumers of the degeneracy, because it is the degenerate media outlets such as MTV, BET, and these quote-unquote fake reality shows, these degenerate outlets are themselves been the chief publicists of this sagging pants culture. So hence it comes back to my point that if they're going to ban young men wearing the saggy pants in New Orleans, that's not necessarily fixing the situation, but which a generation of young men are saying to the larger society, you can look at my butt. That's how badly you've managed these resources. Your response?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is a symptom of a sickness. It's the general opinion out there is that the sagging pants started in jail because they take the belts from prisoners to avoid them using their belts as suicide. But I declare that the sagging pants is this generation's way of telling the world, kiss my ass, I don't care. We have a crisis with our boys. And, when I listen to general media, they talk about black youth, they talk about black teens, they talk about black young people, they talk about black kids. They don't talk about the needs of black boys and by being gender specific. We have a crisis specifically with black boys. And we, the general society did not recognize the symptoms when, gangster rap was prominent. You may recall C. Dolores Tucker, who was an activist, a black woman, who had launched a crusade because she was annoyed that rappers were using the word bitch. Okay, and I would respond by reminding her and people who were part of that crusade that these rappers don't just use the B word; they use the N word, the F word, every other kind of vile and foul words. You may recall the controversy of F the police, and of course, I believe it was the police chief out in Los Angeles who got on. I believe it was NWA, Eazy-E. I believe he was the author of that song. And of course, so my point being, black boys are mad at everybody. They're calling everybody some kind of a bad name. The F word, the N word, the B word, and so now they're sagging pants, and like you said, their body language is further indication. It's further symptomatic that they are crying for help. And of course, the Trayvon Martin tragedy and catastrophe, in many ways, whites, their attitude is not in my backyard. We're not going to deal with these, quote, bad boys, even though there's no indication that Trayvon was trespassing or that he was doing anything illegal. He had a right to be there. His father lived there. He was indeed stalked. It was raining. That was the reason he was wearing a hoodie. And George Zimmerman was absolutely wrong to not be a uniformed security guard. And of course, these neighborhood watch laws need to change, because nobody can walk up to another stranger and start inquiring them, and of course subsequently shoot them, and then claim that they were part of the neighborhood watch and standing around laws. So
without examining, because I'm usually trying to avoid examining that case all over again. It's kind of been beaten to the ground. Let me just ask you this: why did white men in America regard George Zimmerman to be a hero and Trayvon Martin to be the demon?
Well, because we should be all familiar with the legacy of racism in America, going back, to the 1960s, in which the overt racism was very, very, very well documented in news shows, typified, of course, by the marches in the South and the attacks upon black and white civil rights workers by whites. And of course, we've made tremendous progress. But one of the things that I often remind blacks that, the question that we should ask is some of the what we think is racism, or hostility that whites show towards blacks, is it racism, or is it white people just being the aggressive and hostile and violent people that they've always been, even among themselves? And that's something that is often forgotten or not mentioned. Whites have a very, very, very violent history among themselves. And of course, like I said, their attitude has, it's a hypocritical attitude of not in my backyard, but, these are the kinds of double standards that blacks have always had to crusade to expose. And of course, our conversation, it is indicative of the fact that this crusade continues.
We have a first couple of calls for the program. If you don't mind, we're going to go to the telephones. Our first call, we'll take them in the order they came in. We have a caller at area code 817. We got you live, 817 on LIB. Your name, where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Terry from Las Vegas.
Greetings, Terry. You need to speak up just a little bit louder. You're on with the mayor of Blacktown.
Hi. I just have one very, very quick statement. Something that was brought to my attention years ago, that sagging, when you spell it backwards, it's spelled niggas. And so one references the other. And so I just wanted to hear your take on that.
Mayor of Blacktown, you want to respond?
Yeah, absolutely. I consider that, if you type that into Google, there's several posters. On my website, I have a poster that shows that, and I consider that an omen. And another strange omen is that, Trayvon was born in February, which is Black History Month. He was killed in February, which is Black History Month. He was born in 1995, which was the same year as the Million Man March, which something that I often remind black men that they had that historic monumental march almost 20 years ago. And of course, Trayvon was killed on February 26th. That is the day that the Nation of Islam celebrates the coming of God. So all of these strange omen, if you will, are signs. And of course, black people being as religious as we are, we should, like that old Negro spiritual, God is trying to tell you something. And yeah, these things are prone to interpretation, but like the sister said, the word sagging spells nigga backwards. That's not an omen. That is a literal grammatical fact.
I would just add to it that both sagging and niggas are symbolic representations of a degenerate cultural state. And so, yes, the word, be it coincidence, be it an omen, or be it some mad scientist said, hey, wait, we figured out something here. Let's see if we can implement this. It still represents the same thing. Evidence of a cultural or a set of cultural patterns that are degenerate and sustainable, and ultimately both sagging and the designation of niggas, both of them disqualify a significant number of these young people who adopt this as a fundamental point of identity, disqualify them for acceptance within this nation's economic and social cultural patterns, or social patterns and economic patterns. I don't know of any country around the planet that accepts the designations of sagging and niggas as acceptable within social and or cultural patterns. And so whatever the coincidence,
absolutely,
they are excluding.
Yeah, let me say this, because, black men eventually are going to have to adopt a not in my backyard attitude. And of course, that's why, I founded Blacktown.net in 1998. Because here in Chicago, there's a Chinatown, and there's a new town, there's an old town. We've heard of Germantown. Everybody has a town. And I remember when I had that epiphany, where is Blacktown, back in the early 90s, and I just thought, no big deal. Sometimes people would tell me, well, there's no white town. But then I was driving down North Avenue, and you can see this on the internet. You can type it in, and I saw a store called Hairtown. And it's a Korean-owned shop in the ghetto. And I thought, I was, I'm like almost in a state of shock. Hairtown. And over the course of weeks and months, I just, thought, no big deal. And then, of course, it became exposed that Black Wall Street, that became popular. Somebody wrote a book or did a video, some kind of documentary, and it talked about Black Wall Street. And then, of course, we learned about Rosewood. So then the word got out that, wait a minute, once upon a time, black people did have black towns, just like the Chinaman has Chinatowns, and I think out in L.A. there's a Koreatown. And, of course, once again, black people were victims of racism. Our black towns were burned down.
Not
So,
the overwhelming majority of them. We always have to correct this. The overwhelming majority of them were not destroyed. Even in Oklahoma, where we founded 23 all black towns, and again, the Greenwood section of Tulsa was not technically a black town, but we'll claim it as such. But we formed 23 of them. Only Greenwood was the one destroyed. 13 of the 23 we founded actually still do exist, including the largest, which is Boley, Oklahoma.
And I'm so glad to hear that, because we need to hear that, and we're not hearing this from mainstream media
or black media.
Yeah, they are just obsessed with, like I said, they want to fiddle while Rome burns, and it's a crisis. It is an absolute crisis, because they're not contributing anything towards the upliftment of black people. And like I said, it's culminated with a rise in ethnic tensions. Racial tensions have risen.
Let's see if we can get a
Trayvon Martin.
Let's see if we can get a follow-up comment from Terry. We'll free that line up and go to a second caller who's been holding on for quite some time. Terry?
No, I'm totally in agreement with everything that's being said. Having lived in Chicago, I know exactly what he's referring to. You see every other kind of town, so I'm glad to hear about Blacktown. So keep up the great work.
All
right.
right.
Thank you, Terry.
All right, and make sure you unflag yourself by hitting that one button. That'll take you out of the queue. And in case you want to speak again, you can just hit it a second time. Let's take a second call, if you don't mind. We go to area code 616. Give us your name, where you're calling from.
What's up, Baba Keating? This is Baba Franz calling from House Mission.
Welcome, Baba Franz. You're on with the mayor of Blacktown. What's on your mind?
Well, being originally from Gardens, I want to commend him for his efforts, and I checked out his website. But I just have one statement that I'd like him to comment on, and this is my own observation. The modern-day gated community is the modern fort erected to keep out black people, just like forts were erected to keep Native Americans out. And any Native Americans approaching the fort were shot. That's all I have to say.
All right. Let's get a response from the mayor of Blacktown on that.
Well, he's absolutely right. The so-called gated community. But like I said earlier, we must never forget why America was founded. Whites were living in Europe, and they were at each other's throats, and they lived in castles. They lived in castles. The black people, when you look at Africa, there are no barriers. There are no forts. There are no fortresses. I mean, think about it. We were one with nature. We had a lot of tribes, and we all got along. That is very important. And, many Africans will tell you that, everybody in Africa, the majority speak 6 and 7 languages, because there are there's such a diversity of tribes, or what they call villages, compared to Europe. Okay, even when whites came to Africa, the first thing they built were fortresses along the coast, which of course, ultimately led to the slave trade. But now that's all coming full circle, because as a result of 2 world wars, and of course the last one, World War I, when Adolf Hitler almost took over the world because of his advances in technology, it has really shown us that white supremacy, or so-called white supremacy, is dying. It is dying. And, when we look at America, black people, we have been the lifeblood of this country. And were it not for black people, believe me, America would turn into another white-on-white, war-torn Europe without black people. I mean, black people, we are the most civilized people on earth. And now we can see that. So, we have to, and the caller is, he's absolutely right. But we have to always remember why white people do these strange things. I think there's even a term for it, I think it's called xenophobia, fear of foreigners. They want to live in castles. They want to live in fortresses. They have these barriers between, just barriers, man. So, like I said, we have to, black people, we have to understand why white people have these strange pathologies. Let's not forget another recent prominent example of white pathology is this white man who had these 3 sex slaves in his basement for 10 years, okay? And, of course, there was a black man, I believe Charles Ramsey was his name, rescued these girls. I mean, that was yet another powerful omen, if you will, of what we're dealing with, and the pathology, white pathology, strange habits that black people have had to deal with. Let's not forget the Catholic priests and their pedophile scandal. That contradiction. Here, these people are supposed to be, holier than thou, and part of the Catholic religion is that the priests be called fathers, yet they don't even believe, their religion forbids them from becoming fathers. I mean, that is yet another contradiction, hypocritical, double standard, and contradiction. Everybody's calling these priests father this, father that. They don't believe in reproducing with women, and subsequently, when it's been revealed that they're using their reproductive organs for all wrong reasons, molesting children. So all of these revelations are, the analogy I use is, Pharaoh is being exposed, okay? And black people, we have to chart a course for the promised land. We really do. We've got to solve our own problems.
Oh, let's go to telephone lines again. We have another caller holding on the Blog Talk line. I don't have your number. So give us your name, where you're calling from.
Hello?
Hello. We hear you. Hello? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Ron from Los Angeles.
Brother Ron from Los Angeles. Great to hear from you. You're on with the mayor of Blacktown. We're talking about posts, George Zimmerman verdict, and manhood, black manhood. Stand up. What are you hearing, Brother Ron, you want to speak to?
Yes, I'd like to, for your guest to give comment on my assessment is that the key things I think us as a community need to take home from it is the corruption of the jury. The witness, who I think was 110% credible, the female friend of Trayvon, the jury interview in plain English, she's not credible. And there's no follow-up on such a ridiculous statement as that. So, to me, that's kind of telling us as a community, a black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect.
Okay, can I get you, Brother Ron? Can I get you? I'm sorry, the phone's breaking up a little bit. I don't know whether you're using voice over IP, but I need you to just clarify for me again what you just said. The jury said that one of the witnesses who testified had no credibility. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Well, hold on one second.
All right, and we're live and direct. The time right now, 9:58 a.m. here on the West Coast. That makes it 12:58 p.m. for our East Coast listeners. and we're live and direct talking with the mayor of Blacktown. Brother Ron, we got you back.
Yes. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I think that is a little better.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what I was saying is that the notion that the white jurors said that Trayvon Martin, the key witness for Trayvon, his female friend, was incredible. I mean, that was almost like saying that one plus one equals incredible. I mean, that was such a ridiculous thing, and I think the media kind of overlooked that. Us as a community, that's basically putting us on notice that there's no rights that black people have that a white man is bound to respect. I think that's from the Dred Scott decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think knowing that as a baseline, we have to move along appropriately.
Okay, let me have the mayor of Blacktown respond to what you've just said.
Yeah, the trial in the jury verdict down there in Florida has stimulated a whole lot of discussion about the double standards that blacks have had to endure since we've been in this country, and it's been a long struggle. And like I said earlier, the election of the first black president it has shown that alone is not enough to remove these double standards. And like I just said a moment ago, we have to also consider, is some of the things that white people do to blacks racism, or is it just white people, is it just part of their long history and their long legacy of being a very violent people? And we have to consider that. We really, really do. Another strange coincidence was, I think when George Zimmerman was first charged, and of course the media exploded with this case. He and his lawyer gave a Fox News interview, okay, and I'll never forget it because it was like, wow, he's beginning his public relations campaign to improve his image. And I think one of the controversial comments that he made was that it was something about God, almost, he evoked God. And I'll never forget it, and this can be, you can substantiate this. Later that night, in Colorado, the Batman movie shooting erupted. I mean, literally a few hours after that nationally televised Fox interview with George Zimmerman, the Batman movie theater tragedy or catastrophe hit. And we also know, as a result of that, people thought another strange coincidence was that a year later, almost to the day, matter of fact, I think a year later, 365 days earlier, I think it was or was it 10 years? Or something about my point being the Columbine school shooting had erupted the same day. I think that's what I was trying to look at. So my point being, we're in the information age. We have to connect the dots. Okay, when I listen to black radio, I hear a lot of opinion. Black people, we have this powerful phenomenon, this blessing called the internet, called wireless technology. We have to connect the dots because, like I said, Pharaoh has been exposed. The myth of whites being superior, global warming. We have all of these very, very, very powerful signs that nature is going to take its course, and that truth crushed to the ground will rise again. So what I'm saying is there are a lot of strange things that are going on, and we have to take we have to connect the dots. We have to, and like I said, brother Kwesi, you are building that bond with nature. And that is something that black people have always had. this reverence for nature.
Yeah.
And like I said, go ahead. Oh yeah. The other point is that what we are witnessing is the end of white supremacy right before our eyes.
Yeah, or perhaps opening up to the fact that white supremacy actually ended some time ago. Now we might want to deal with how they're organized and how they use their sense of organization to dominate many of us. Because we're so short on time, Brother Ron, and we have one more caller and maybe two more callers trying to get in, I'm going to get a follow-up and wrap-up comment from you, Brother Ron. Comment or question?
Yes. My follow-up question is, okay, if white supremacy is gone or is not here anymore, how do we as a people take ultimate advantage, turn that to an ultimate advantage where we have some tangible results? I'll take my answer off the phone.
Good question. Mayor Blacktown, you want to respond? And then I'd like to respond to that also.
Absolutely. At the top of that list, black men have to do what we're doing now. We have to go in the huddle. And, you know, my whole crusade has been to deal with how feminism and women's liberation destroyed the 1960s black liberation movement. And, of course, that crusade has, or should I say the feminist crusade, has now culminated with the LGBT, UVWXYZ revolution, so to speak, a literal alphabet soup of alternative lifestyles. Well, we as men, we have a right to be men. There is a reason why men have muscles that women don't have, okay? So we have to also understand gender. We need to formulate a gender agenda and be just as unapologetic about being men. The only reason we're having this confusion about gender is because we don't live on farms anymore, where it was obvious that men chopped down the trees and women kept those men fed and nourished and energized, because there was just so much work to be done. And we must never, ever forget that. This is how men and women have lived for 99.9% of the time that humans have lived on Earth. We just started using power tools. Before power tools and electricity, men chopped down trees, and women didn't.
If I could just briefly respond to Ron's question. If white supremacy is deceased, what do we move to? Well, the first stage is we got to get beyond the if question. We got to make some firm decisions. Now, the reason I'm so very firm about saying white supremacy is dead, been dead, when it comes to talking about food, is their food superior to other people's foods? Indian food, Thai food, Mexican food, African food, Caribbean food? No, it's not. And when it comes down to music, is their music superior to other people's music? No, it's not. Their artwork superior? No, it's not. In certain circumstances, yes. Again, nothing is black and white. And this idea of white supremacy presupposes that their stuff is always better than everybody else's. Now, what they have done, and then even in, again, the idea of white society is itself a nominalization that's inaccurate. If America is a quote-unquote white nation, then what were the contributions of people like George Washington Carver and his relationship to Henry Ford that helped to develop this nation's industry, automobile industry, and its wealth production? What were the contributions of the Buffalo Soldiers in helping to conquer that part of the West that then allowed them to take from the Mexican/Native American through the Treaty of Hidalgo to expand all the way to the West Coast, to incorporate California, Oregon, and Washington, and significantly increase this country's wealth, as California is the greatest wealth-producing state of this country. So we have to understand, America has never been a white nation. We got to get beyond these nominalizations that keep us fixated in an inferior position, which is what the term white supremacy presupposes. Now, if we can then move from there to white organization of what resources that the oligarch brings to bear, because even then, the working class, middle class white man is himself, herself, used by the oligarchy, the blue blood, the old blue line that traces themselves back to British royalty. If we understand that, then their organization and their ability to organize whatever resources are available to them to dominate the rest of us then becomes the very specific problem and challenge that's put on the table before me. And I'll be honest with you, Brother Mayor of Blacktown, if someone challenges me to be better organized so that they and others can no longer dominate me, I've got to be grateful for those people for challenging me to get better organized.
Yeah,
Your
absolutely.
your
brother.
response,
like
and then
I
we'll take
said,
the question, and then we'll take the last call after your response.
Yeah, the whites have a long history, a very, very long legacy of war, and which is one of the reasons why America was founded. And of course, we do know, and we should recall, and I recall when I was in high school, we heard this all the time, that Europeans thought the earth was flat. They thought the earth was flat. In other words, Europe was riddled with superstitious beliefs, while in Africa, we've always understood how the forces of nature work. We understood magnetism. And another fact that is that another blow to the myths that whites are superior is how global warming is obvious now. We recall over the last 10 years there was all of this debate and reluctance to accept it, but the most concrete evidence is that satellite photographs of the North Pole show how it looked when satellites first took pictures of the North Pole compared to now. And they're saying in 50 years, there's not going to be a North Pole, literally. So, the absolute irony in all of this is in 100 years, in our children's lifetimes, and certainly in our grandchildren's lifetimes, everybody on the earth is going to be black, because those ultraviolet rays are going to just start baking and cooking everybody.
Yeah, let's take another phone call. This will be our last call for the show. Caller, thanks for patiently holding on. Your name, where you're calling from?
This is Kashiba.
Greetings, Sister Kashiba. Great to hear from you, beloved. You're on with the Mayor of Blacktown. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, I'm enjoying the program today. You started talking about these pathologies of young black men, and I just had a question regarding black men don't live in isolation by themselves. They're living with and around black women.
Yes.
And I guess, what kinds of pathologies are you identifying among young black women? Okay, that's one question. And then I started thinking about, because I have this talk with some of my relatives sometimes about some of the chemical imbalances in the brain that we're seeing amongst our people or young children because of what they're taking actually into their bodies, the type of food that's available in marginalized neighborhoods, the quality of the food and the type of food, whether it's fast food or outdated food or food that's full of food additives in marginalized neighborhoods. Also, the kind of alcoholic beverages that are available I grew up in Ohio, and I know that there were certain types of malt liquor and other kinds of inferior alcoholic beverages that were only sold in black neighborhoods. I know because my parents had a carryout. and one of the persons pointed that out was Coach Pyle, who was actually a neighbor, and he wrote a book about it. In the sources of water that's available from and the pipes and things that are coming that are in the houses where we receive our water supplies. Some of the lots of lead in some of these pipes and other types of inorganic compounds. I know that's quite a bit, and I know this is the end of the show, but I think we also have to look at some of these things that we're taking into our bodies that affect how we feel and how we act. And basically, I guess that's all I wanted to talk about.
All right. Excellent points that you
and
made.
I'm getting an echo, so I'm going to hang up and listen online.
All right. Thank you so much, beloved, for sharing those thoughts with us. Mayor of Blacktown, she had basically two areas she wanted to discuss. The second was the number of environmental exposures which are negatively impacting our abilities and the abilities of our young people to think and act properly. She made some excellent points. And then she also wanted you to address the pathos or the pathologies affecting young black women.
Yeah, let me say this. One of the things that I often point out, and I've made a video, YouTube videos, you can do a web search for. I've made hundreds of videos, and my videos are not as popular as they should be, and it's because of what the Snowden has exposed about, a modern COINTEL program to keep our men's movement from growing. But nevertheless, my video, one of my prominent videos that I talk about is the Black Mammy, and how we should all see the contradiction that in the 1960s, when black men and black women were finally bonding and building, we would, during the 1960s, we were doing everything right, okay? In our music, our athletes, we didn't have this problem that we have with our athletes, Charles Barkley and some of these other idiots, the 60s era was typified by John Carlos and Tommy Smith when they gave the Black Power salute at the 1968 Olympics. We were united. But then all of a sudden, here come the white feminists and told black women to get out of the kitchen. And, there was nobody who told those white women, wait a minute, black women cooked and energized white men for hundreds of years, but now all of a sudden there's something wrong for a woman to be in the kitchen to make sure her family is well nourished and energized with good food, and that we began the scrutinizing of this food, like the caller just said, because this is what do they call it? GMA, genetically modified, ingredients or whatever. Frankenstein. And like I said, it's culminated with our youth, with these strange habits, sagging pants, and of course in the white community, like I said, white boys are shooting up schools, malls, movie theaters, while black people traditionally, we've always exercised our frustrations in our music. The blues, the jazz, rap music. We all remember when rap music was positive, Public Enemy, X-Clan, but then gangster rap emerged because gangster rap is indeed a symptom of a lot of pain, and the sister is absolutely right. And one of the things we have to point out, the reason women have breasts is she has milk glands. In other words, a woman's nature, her DNA, her makeup is to nurse, nourish, and nurture. And there's nothing wrong with that. Women have a lower center of gravity. They will never be able to dunk basketballs, period. Case closed. And like I said, there was nothing,
there are women dunking now, right?
Well, like I said, we're in this Frankenstein age and of the LGBTUV. So
right.
yeah, but but I'm talking about the original design when God made women. And she may be able to dunk, but a woman will never be able to take a punch or an elbow to her milk glands like a man can, not only on the athletic field but on the battlefield. Men and women are different. And like I said, the only reason we're having this gender confusion is, of course, this is one of the side effects of all of these modern high-tech conveniences in which, but like the caller said, we cannot get too detached from what nature has intended. And she's right. The foods, I mean, I could tell you some personal stories about people who have dizzy spells, and it was because of the milk, genetically modified ingredients. Hormones are being given to these cows. This stuff is part of nature. One of the things that you have to do in nature, you have to wait. I think in the Bible there's a verse. There's a season for everything. A baby is conceived in a womb for 9 months.
And just as a second, we're going to have to begin to wrap here real soon. So as you're making these statements, rather than connecting a bunch of ideas together, if we could maybe consolidate one or two ideas that we're going to have to leave as instruction.
Well, I want everyone to understand that it's time for the men's movement. Black men are justified to discuss the idea of gender. There's a lot of debate about what the new black agenda should be. Tavis Smiley and Cornel West, and they all met at Chicago State way back in 2007, in which they were supposed to formulate an agenda. The black agenda has to be a gender agenda. Black men have to live up to the vow, the oath, the pledge, and the promise they took at the Million Man March to clean up our communities. And, of course, Trayvon is an omen, no doubt about it, because the whole country is talking, and we're going to be talking. There's another incident, another trial is going to be emerging of the white man who shot the black boy, shot the black boys in their van at a gas station because of their music. So there are a lot of these incidences that are continuing to emerge, and of course, black community, we need to circle the wagons, and like I said, chart a course for a new promised land, get back to building black towns. We've got to build black towns, just like everybody else has built towns, and then they stand their ground and adopt a not in my backyard attitude. This is what not only men, this is what all living things do. It's called marking your territory. And at some point, black men have to do that. When Obama went to Africa, shortly after the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the homosexuals, and Obama mentioned it, the African leaders said, we're not going to tolerate. We don't believe in that. So, this is, other men understand. And, of course, the Africans, they were not enslaved. Yes, they're black, but they were not enslaved like we are. So they still understand what it means to, stand your ground and adopt a not in my backyard attitude. Homosexuality was never a part of African culture. Quite frankly, polygamy was. And, of course, one of the purposes of polygamy was to avoid the breakdown of the family and bastard children running around. Boys will always need men. Who made Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 family? Who made Venus and Serena? Who made Tiger Woods? Who made Michael Jordan? These are all prominent stories of black men, strong black fathers, and what a strong black father does when he loves his family and his community and his women.
For those who want to maintain contact with you, learn more about what the mayor of Blacktown is about in this Man Up movement, how can they best stay in contact?
Blacktown.net, or do a search on YouTube for Mayor of Blacktown, because we need some other mayors of black towns, just like there are Chinatowns and Koreatowns all throughout America and throughout the world. That's what men do. Men build things. That's why we have muscles. We build things. And I want to salute you and applaud you, brother. I'm very, very proud of what you're doing as far as helping our people understand the power of plants, and that is the source of a lot of our, matter of fact, not a lot, all of our, the solution to all of our problems, how we nourish ourselves.
Ashe, and so it goes on, and so it is. Thank you so much for being with us. And the mayor of Blacktown, everybody, do pay attention. Much of what the brother is saying is transformational, and we need to get on top of these things. That's why we had to bring him back today with us on livinginblack.com. Thank you, brother mayor of Blacktown. We'll be talking real soon. I'll make sure you get a copy of today's program for your files.